Hi and welcome to The Practice Gap, the podcast for closing the gap between the practice you have and the one that you want. I'm Elizabeth, a chiropractor, a business owner, coach and entrepreneur on a mission to help you move from frustration and overwhelm to clarity, focus and joy in practice.
Hi and welcome back, Haakon Kunle, a chiropractor who loves to work with the very difficult patients, the 20 to 10% that regular chiropractors get super frustrated about and wonder what should I do with this patient. That's his favorite patient. So we're going to talk about, in this episode, we are going to pick your brain about different ways to run clinics and what your experience has been in the years you've been working in the States and also the different ways you've been working in Norway.
Cool. Okay, so when I was in the States, I feel, or I compare it to when my dad and my mom went to Palmer University and they had Gonstead. Like Gonstead was the coolest guy with a big clinic in Mount Horeb and had a hospital or a hotel next to it and had an airstrip and all this stuff. And I feel Atlanta at the time where me and my friends that went to school from Norway came to America, Dr. Carrick was kind of like the Gonstead of our time. And over the 2 first years of me going to school in Atlanta, he built this 20,000 square meter clinic in Atlanta and had like 25 different treatment rooms and all the coolest high-tech things with off-axis rotational chairs and all this see-through mirrors. It was perfectly for observing and it was very like mind-blowing. I'm like, whoa, this is very, very, very big compared to my dad's tiny clinic in Tønsberg in Norway, right? But then when I finished school, I went to work for a guy named Dr. Zelinsky in Portland, Oregon. And he had a way smaller clinic, but it was super efficient. Like he had this perfect way of actually doing functional neurology because it's hard to make the clinic flow perfectly doing functional neurology because you do so many different therapies per patient and you don't technically need to have the brain of a chiropractor to run electrical stimulation or to run lasers or to run eye-hand coordination and all this. You just need our brain to diagnose and come up with the treatment plan, and then you can have what's called techs or chiropractic assistants in order to run all these other gadgets that you have in the clinic. And when I got the working experience and actually got to be a typewriter for him, it was because in America, in order to practice chiropractic, you need to pass your boards, which are quite hard. And so I never thought I was going to stay in America when I was here and was there in the beginning. And then when I got this job offer, I had to take all 4 boards very, very fast. So for the first 3 months when I was in Portland, I wasn't allowed to work as a chiropractor. And I was just being Dr. Zelinsky's scribe. And that was probably where I learned the most. I was listening into his case history reports and also his report of findings. When he was doing the report of findings, I was the guy typing all the stuff he said, all the findings he said. And it's very funny because when now I do report of findings, I feel like I'm just talking this exact same way that he's doing. And I almost feel like I can sell ice to an Eskimo. It's very interesting. After being at his office for quite some time, then I got confident to say like, oh, maybe you actually can make this work because he has a business structure that makes functional neurology doable. Because I had heard that like, oh, you can't come back to Norway and do functional neurology right off the bat. You have to start a regular chiropractic clinic and then you have to work up a reputation. And then after a few years, then maybe you can do what you want. And I'm like, that's not what I want to do though. Like the only reason I became a chiropractor is because I want to do this stuff. And I think it's very, very important. And it's, yes, maybe it's only the 10% or the 20% of the normal chiropractic patient basis, but that's a huge number of people. Yeah. When I got back to Norway, I was fortunate enough to be able to do turnus at both Aas-Jakobsen with Mats Omberg and guys that are there. Oh, they're going to be so pissed. Yes, Axel, they're going to be so pissed if I don't remember their names. And also, so I did 50% there, and then I did 50% at Funksjonell Nevrologisk Center in Hegdehaugsveien with Kim Lauring and Olve Lyngseth, which were like the guys I looked up to when I went to school, because I'm like, oh, they've been doing functional neurology for so many years. Like, oh, this is so cool. It was very fun because I got to bring a new light into the clinic with all the new knowledge and the business structure that I learned in America. So for the entire tuners year that I was there, it was super fun to try to work this stuff in. But again, it's super hard because I came from a clinic in America where we were seeing maybe 15, 20 really hardcore neurological cases a day. And then I came to Norway and I'm like, wait, I'm seeing one patient every week. Like, well, I have to start from scratch again. And then who are you? Like, what do? You do concussion work, you do some functional neurology. You're not even a chiropractor. Like, what? No, I am a chiropractor. And then it was very hard in the beginning to kind of get your roots into Norway. And I don't know if it's due to janteloven or what it is, but you're not supposed to think that you can teach anyone anything, or you shouldn't think highly of yourself and all this stuff. But so
don't stick your nose out. Right? Don't try to be better than. Don't think you're better than anyone else.
So no, then I obviously got a little bit of help from mom and dad sending me some patients and stuff, and then all of a sudden it started to gain some traction in Oslo as well, and it was a very cool learning experience and super fun to work with those guys in Oslo. But then I got the opportunity to take over mom and dad's clinic in Tønsberg.
How many years had you been working when you took over the clinic?
1.5.
Yeah. But also plus
1 year in the States. Yeah, okay. So two and a half years.
Yeah.
And
then 3 different clinics, right?
Yes. So then I moved back to Tønsberg, and then I got the same thing, told me the same thing. You can't do functional neurology in tiny 40,000 people city called Tønsberg. Like, you barely made it work in Oslo. You really think you're gonna make it in Tønsberg? And I was like, well, I love people saying no to stuff, and
so that was the same when I opened my specialty clinic in treating pelvic pain and children. It was 8.5 years ago, and my colleagues and friends are like, well, you can't open a clinic, you just live off treating colic children, or don't think that pregnant women will just walk into clinic just because you say that you know anything about it. And it took me a month, and then I had a full. It was I could pay all my bills the first month.
Amazing.
It's very cool.
No, I think that's very cool, or a very good point to make. I think you're way better off doing your specialization as soon as you can. I remember in school, because school is tough as it is, right? Chiropractic education is very intense, and there's so much stuff you have to learn. But still, I would encourage any student that are in school or want to become a chiropractor to try to do their specialization while they're in school. Because I had so many friends in school that said, like, I'll do functional neurology after school, I'll do this after school. But then your bills really start racking up. Your housing bills, your clinic bills, you get children, and then all of a sudden...
You don't get student prices on the seminars anymore, and you have other priorities. It's tough.
So, that's my number one thing, is to specialize early, and also then you get ahead of the curve. It's super cool. And I don't really compete with any chiropractors in my neighborhood, or even within my fylke. Like, there's
county.
Yeah. There's no one, like, I don't see any. There's no patient of mine that come in and say they have neck or low back pain. Most of them have that, but they always have something above it, like epileptic seizures, concussions, dizziness, chronic migraines, Sieg syndromes, dysautonomia, dystonias, all these weird neurological cases. And then when you actually get to stabilize their system, then they respond perfectly to normal chiropractic care. Yeah. So that's what I think is really cool, because then I can send it back to the chiropractor that.
So if I have a problem case that like I fix something and they don't get better, I can send them off to you and you work on them for a while, and then when they have those big issues resolved and just become a more regular patient, then they can come back to me and have a great life with me.
Yeah, because this comes down to what we talked about in the previous podcast, and that is the chiropractic adjustment in itself is so powerful that sometimes when I do it on my patients, it's not so cool. Like I actually either make them super dizzy, I make them faint and all this stuff if you don't do it correctly, because their nervous system is way more unstable than and I don't say that this doesn't happen in regular chiropractic clinics, because I tend to do that sometimes too, because we see a lot of very special cases in a normal chiropractic clinic too. But I tend to feel that if you don't give them time to talk about their issue, then maybe you missed that they had a head injury, or they have this other dizziness thing that you didn't really talk about because they didn't have it as a chief complaint.
And we all have the patients who come back 3 days later or 3 visits later. I was like, and they talk about some crazy injury or operation, and I'm thinking like, I'm the worst chiropractor in the world because I didn't pick it up, and they never told me, or they had cancer or something crazy, and they didn't think it was relevant.
Because what? You're just a chiropractor.
You're just chiropractor. You just crack backs.
Yeah, right. and I think that's why I really spend so much time on my initial consultation, because I try. It's what they say in this. When you get your diploma at Life University, I don't know if it's like this for any other chiropractic, but it says the Hippocratic Oath, like first do no harm. So it's very, even if you don't fix them, try not to mess them up.
Maybe not stimulate too much. We all had the patients, we gave that it's too much. Less is more. Yeah,
less is definitely more. And I'd still, like, even now that I graduated in 2016, so I've been working for 7 years almost.
It must be. I mean, it's 25, so it's 9 years.
Whoa, yeah.
This is what happens you've been working for. You have no idea how long you've been working.
Yeah, so I try so hard not to overstimulate my patients, but the way my practice runs is you don't get to choose your care plan. It's either, if you're within a vicinity of 40 minutes, it's either 3 times a week for 4 weeks, and then we do a reevaluation, and then you get 6 weeks of home care. If you're out of or longer away from that, if
I'm I'm a chiropractor in the north of Norway and have this really hard case, if I want to send them to you, and I mean they can't fly back and forth, so what is a way you can help them and help me as a chiropractor?
So this is what is super cool about doing functional neurology, because so what we do then is we have what's called intensive weeks. You can either choose 1 full day of treatment, 3 days of treatment, or 5 days of treatments. And it might sound too much, but we see each patient maybe like 5 times a day for 5 days straight, but I can't adjust them 5 times a day. So this is where all these other therapies comes in. So functional neurology is just...
It's kind of like being in a rehab center.
Yes, yeah. It is. One session we might do eye movements, one session we might do vestibular rehab, one session we might do fascia work, one session we might do chiropractic, and one session we might do laser. And then you try to combine this into make this orchestra of your nervous system play correctly. Because I think this is where most traditional neurological rehabilitation fails is... So say you go to Sunnaas or you go to Fram or you...
These are rehab center, not rehabilitation centers in Norway.
Yes. When you go to these places, I feel like a lot of the normal neurological rehabilitation is very segregated. So like today you're only going to do vestibular rehab, or today you're going to go see your physio, or today you're going to see the neurologist, or today you're going to see a personal trainer. And it's very often in groups session therapies. You as an individual... Like, you have to see you or the patient as an individual, because even though they present with the same type of dizziness or the same type of headaches or the same type of problems, they are unique as the person that comes into the room. So you have to try to tailor make the treatment plan into that specific person that is in front of you. I think that is beauty of knowing the nervous system, and it's a very fun thing to do, because all I do is I put a stimulation in and see what is the motor respond, and is the motor response favorable? Cool. Then I can maybe continue doing this therapy. If I do this therapy and the balance gets worse, I'm like, I'm not doing this type of therapy. Then I have to find some other ways of coming into the nervous system from, because there's so many avenues of hitting one specific area of the brain. You can go through so many different pathways and exits, entries in order to hit that one spot. And you just have to be creative of how and why and when do I want to stimulate this area. And I only do this to the point where I'm like, now you're perfectly fine. yes, now I can blast your nervous system with an adjustment, to actually try to facilitate neuroplasticity. And I think the chiropractic adjustment does that best out of all the tools I have in the clinic.
So if we're going to sum it up at the end, if you're going to give some advice, especially for the younger chiropractors who are really interested in some kind of specialty, if it's ankle or knee problems or some kind of other kind of specialty, what are the advice, or geriatric population, what are some of the best advice you can give the new chiropractor who really loves some sub-part of chiropractor they want to jump into, or dive into?
Yeah, this might sound biased, but I think regardless of your speciality, if it's children, if it's pediatrics, if it's sports chiropractic, if it's geriatrics, if it's dizziness, if it's networking, if it's upper cervical, it doesn't really matter. But the coolest thing about functional neurology is that just by learning how the nervous system functions truly will elevate any technique you do afterwards, because it does truly matter if you adjust the neck on the left or the right side. It does really matter if you adjust the right ankle or the left ankle. It does really matter if I take my skin contact this way, depending on this way. Like, all these stuff matters. But then people are like, but does it really though? And I'm like, it all depends on the patient that you see. But this comes down to, when you do chiropractic perfectly, it's miracles almost every time. And if you do it kind of perfect, it's like, cool, I got a little bit better. But then, and I hear this.
You probably miss the miracles. Then the profession gets boring. And then you don't want to maybe renew yourself, and then you get tired, and then suddenly you do something else.
And this is it comes back to the 3 parts of making yourself a chiropractor, because it kind of gets redundant sometimes, doing the same stuff Monday through Friday and all this. But going to seminars is probably the most motivating thing ever. I just got
Become a seminar junkie.
I probably do like 5 or 6 seminars outside of the Norwegian Association seminar every year. And I just came back from a 48-hour trip to the States 2 weeks ago to do a neurological conference. And it was so much fun, even though it was tiring and a little bit jet lagged at work on Tuesday morning. But it was so cool, and it was so inspiring. I had such glow in the clinic when I came back, and I'm like, oh, cool, now I can implement all this stuff. And I have learned a new skill in order to treat my patient, and maybe they get better even faster. And this comes back to also the type of treatment that we do in the clinic with these intensives that we have. It make any patient anywhere in the world can actually come to the clinic. I'm not bound by the people that can drive there. So you come.
And if you have a big problem and a terrible chronic, you will go somewhere to get help. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's quite cool, because like they told me, like, oh, you can't do functional neurology in Tønsberg, but I bought the clinic in the end of 2019. Last year, I think we had patients from England, Sweden, Hungary, Denmark, Germany, and they all fly in just to tiny little Norway and tiny little Tønsberg to get treated by this chiropractor that hasn't been in practice for 10 years. And I still feel like I know nothing compared to like all the great people that I've been able to work along with and learn from. So it's a very humbling experience. And I still feel like I don't know enough. And that's why, please, like, find yourself 2 or 3 mentors and really, like, I still to this day talk to Dr. Zelinsky, Dr. Mark Ellis, like on a daily basis. I talk to them and I'm like, hey, this case, it was really hard. Do you have any pointers that I can do or fix, or do you have anything else that I maybe missed or anything like this? And it's very, you don't feel so alone in the world, because it could be quite hard, even just being the one doctor, especially if you're a new one. And I remember like being the shaky hands, like when you're touching people and you're like, oh man, I'm not that nervous, but I'm super nervous. So so the number one thing is to get 2 or 3 mentors, go to so many seminars, like all the seminars you can do, and then observe clinics. And if anyone wants to come and hang out in the clinic, I allow anyone to come and hang out for 2 or 3 days if they want to see what a functional neurology clinic looks like.
Perfect. I get super inspired by listening to, and my favorite thing is I get so much hope for the future of this profession because we have so much to do and so much to give, and there's so much out there. And if I'm going to sum up my take-home messages now, especially for the young chiropractors out there, start early to specialize in whatever you do. Also do more functional neurology because that will help you in any kind of specialization you want to do. And go to seminars, get mentors, and observe. Just learn more.
And don't be afraid to fail.
Don't be afraid. That's when we learn. We learn mostly when we fail. Perfect. Thank you so much for being here. It's been really, really awesome. And if people want to contact you, can I put your name and email address in the show notes?
Thank you.